Hi guys, welcome back to At Home with Holly. My name's Holly. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. It has been a very productive last few days in my house. It was turkey butchering day, and so I took the turkeys to the processor and they were given back to me, and they looked just like I had ate turkeys from the grocery store. And so what I did was I turned all of that turkey meat into some delicious things to put in the freezer, and I preserved it in a few different ways. I did some ground, I did some wings that were marinated, I did some seasoned whole turkeys that we're gonna be roasting later, and I also took a ham out of the freezer and roasted it up and turned it into something delicious. So I want to take you guys with me so you can see what I've been up to. Oh, and I also took some chickens that were my older girls that were not really laying anymore, and I actually had them butchered as well, and I turned them into some yummy broth. And anyway, I want to take you guys with me on what we've been up to. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's get started. The very first thing that I did was I took all the turkey and chicken feet that the processor had cleaned and given back to me, and I put them in individual bags so that when I was making broth, I could add them. Then I took a large stock pot, filled it up with all the fixins, plus the chicken, the hen carcasses that I had, and I went ahead and started a batch of broth, and that's going to be going in the background for like 2 days. And then this was the first day of me breaking down the turkey, and I've broken down turkeys before, but it's been a minute, and I've done a lot of chicken since then, so sometimes you forget how big a turkey is. So I had told myself that I would just do the first 2 birds on this evening, and then the next day I would get to the other 6. And so I went ahead and took the time, and I was kind of making the decision, like, how much do I want to take off of the meat to do in a grind? How much do I want to, what was I going to do with each individual piece? And while I was thinking that, I was thinking, you know what, I should go ahead and roast these bones. So I decided that I would roast the bones. I go through a lot of broth. We drink broth every day. Someone in my house is just my daughter and I, and we are drinking broth every single day, whether I drink it for breakfast or she drinks it at night before she goes to bed, or we both drink it if we're not feeling good. We drink bone broth all the time. It's our drink of choice, basically. And so I love to be able to make the batches, but part of making the batches and really doing the effort is taking the time to roast the bones to get that really good, deep flavor. And so I just basically put on a documentary on TV and went to carving. And what I decided to do was, since I was going to be in here for a couple hours, I would go ahead and take the time to roast the bones and then vacuum pack them in a bag with carrots, onions, some celery, and just go ahead and get them ready to make broth. So I decided to make broth kits, basically, where I have the bones already roasted, like I said, the carrots, the onions, the bay leaf, all the things in there, so that all I have to do is take out that frozen bag of already roasted bones, put it in a stock pot whenever I need to make a new batch of stock. And so that's what these bags are. They are the roasted bones vacuum packed with the, herbs and carrots and all the stuff just ready to go. And I think that's going to make my future self very, very happy. And then I decided, well, I do have some beef bones too. So I decided to roast off the beef bones while I was working in the kitchen the second day. So this is the second day of me breaking it down. And the process definitely went a little more smoothly this time. I kind of made the decision, okay, I'm going to take the wings and I'm going to marinate them with some barbecue sauce, so that I have some easy weeknight dinner with just a couple turkey wings in each individually packed bag. And then I'm going to definitely carve up the breast meat and the thigh meat, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is how much time I'm going to take, parting out each of the pieces and just kind of filling up a tray, roasting off the bones, putting the meat in the individual containers so that I could just get exactly what I needed and kind of streamline the whole process for sure. Now, I enjoy things like this where I spend the day in the kitchen making meals easier for me. Oh, this is when I was marinating the wings, making my future self feel better. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have these good quality meals, but I don't want to have to maybe necessarily spend hours in the kitchen every single day. So I like these days where I can commit to it and really take the time to process everything so that I feel good about the quality of my food that I'm serving to my friends and myself and my family. But I didn't have to necessarily spend hours every single day doing it. This was a day where I took a week, really, that I took a couple days and made it like a processing day. And so it wasn't the easiest of days. It did take a lot of energy and a lot of effort, and it was basically like a a marathon kitchen session. But I'm so happy with the progress in the end. So this is me again making more of the bone broth kit bags because I have all of the bones roasting in the oven. And so I did actually only break down 6 of the turkeys, and then I'll show you what I did with the other 2 turkeys. But these first 6 turkeys, I definitely got bone broth kits, and each one of these kits has a full turkey carcass in it, and then that fits really nicely inside that big pot that I have on the stove, which is essentially the pot that I use every time I'm going to make bone broth, because I get, I think I end up getting like 24 pints or sometimes 30 pints out of when I do that size pot. So it's just kind of my go-to. So anyway, I'm taking the time to roast the bones, and then I thought, well, I'm in the kitchen and I've got to be watching this pot, kind of making sure that it's going low and slow. And then I thought, well, I will make the breakfast sandwiches. I love having breakfast sandwiches. I think you guys saw me do that last time we were together. I made some sausage ones, and so I thought, well, let's do the same thing with ham that I can roast off and make ham and egg and cheese croissant sandwiches, because I found croissants on sale. It was like the day old section. And so I was like, okay, so I whipped up a dozen eggs, put them on a baking sheet, because again, I'm already in the kitchen doing all this stuff. So better to have it kind of working in the background. So I went ahead and I baked off 24 eggs because I had enough croissants to do 24 sandwiches. And I roasted a ham in the oven because I knew that we were going to enjoy some. That way dinner would be covered, right? So I'll have ham roasting, and then we'll be able to enjoy that for dinner. And then I'll be able to take the ham, carve it up, and make some yummy breakfast sandwiches. Olivia and I cannot eat an entire baked ham by ourselves, obviously in one setting. So this is a good way for me to kind of use up what I've got, make some good quality food for future me. And since I was already in the kitchen, it was a good time to do it. So I went ahead and took the eggs and I cut them up into 24 pieces. And then I thought, oh, I don't know that I'm actually going to get to building these sandwiches today. I do have a lot more work to do on these turkeys. So I went ahead and packaged them up and got them in the fridge. And then I baked off the ham. And my next batch of bones was almost ready to be put in the bag. So I went ahead and worked on getting the bone broth kits ready. So I went into the garden and actually pulled up some carrots because I was running low on carrots. Then I remembered, I have a whole garden full of carrots. I went out to the garden and I pulled some carrots, and then I went ahead and pulled some onions that their necks had flopped over. This year I've just been kind of, as their necks flop over individually, I pull them instead of harvesting all of them. And I decided I'm going to put the greens and the onions in these broth kit things. So I did rinse them off, and then I pulled off the outer leaves. Now usually I leave those skins on, but just because I had just pulled them out of the garden, and I gave them a quick rinse, and then cut off their outer leaves in case there was any creepy crawlies or anything hiding in there. And then I put them in the bag, tops and all, because there's some good flavor in that as well. And so I got them in the individual bags, and I was able to make so many broth kits, you guys. I think I'm so excited about that because I really can't say enough how much broth we make. And the flavor is so different when the bones are roasted, but it is kind of a process. So, don't forget the beef bones. So I roasted off the beef bones like you saw me do earlier, and so I made the beef broth kit as well. This was actually kind of perfect timing because I did have about 8 onions that flopped over, and I thought, well, I can start hanging them to dry in my basement, or not my basement, my garage, or I can go ahead and actually use them as they come in and get them processed in a way that, again, makes future me very happy. So very good timing for the onions to decide they wanted to flop over so that I could go ahead and add them to the bone broth making kit. Okay, so next it is time to deal with the two turkeys that I did not part out. And so these two turkeys were the smallest turkeys. Again, my family is small, so I do not need like an 18-pound turkey to roast off and have several days. I'm already going to have several days of leftover for the size turkeys that I did. So I have two 10-pound turkeys. They were the smallest ones that I had. And I went ahead and I picked two different seasonings. So the first one I did was a garlic herb. So it's salt, pepper, garlic, some yummy spices like that. And so I just went ahead and rubbed down the whole bird. I patted it dry, put it in the bowl, rubbed it down. And then I had these expandable vacuum seal bags. And so I went ahead and got the herb rubbed turkey put into this vacuum seal bag. And this is one of those expandable ones. So you can do a whole turkey or lasagna or, you know, just all the larger things that you need done. So once I figured out how to get the bag to work, then I went ahead and got the turkey in the bag. And for the second turkey, I mixed things up a little bit and I did a Cajun seasoning. So same thing as before, I went ahead and got the bird completely covered in the seasoning, inside the cavity, out, and I put it in the pleatable, expandable pleatable. I'm not sure how it works, but it expands because of the pleats and then it shrinks again to make sure you get a tight seal. So I went ahead and got the Cajun rubbed turkey into this bag. And I mean, here's the thing, this 10-pound turkey, that's a lot of good eating on that turkey. So I'm excited about that. But anyway, so we got the smaller turkeys put in the vacuum bags. I cut off the excess and then I went ahead and vacuum sealed the bags. This was my first time using the expandable ones. And yeah, I'm a fan. Like they were nice. You have to kind of figure out how to get the pleats to line up and stuff, but they worked really well. And I was able to get both these turkeys seasoned and ready to go so that for Thanksgiving or for just because we can go ahead and roast off these yummy turkeys. Okay, next step in the turkey processing is the meat grinding. So I have a KitchenAid that has a meat grinder attachment, but since I was doing such a large batch, I actually asked my friend, my neighbor and friend, if I could borrow hers, and she said yes. So shout out to Sarah, thank you for that. And so she let me borrow this, and this was my first time using this one, and it had two settings. One was like the larger grind, and then one was the more fine one. And I started off with the larger one because I thought, well, maybe it'll take two grinds, I don't know. But I started off with the larger one, I grinded all of it, and then I thought, this is way too coarse of a grind. I should have done the finer one. And so I ended up switching out the attachments and rerunning it through to get that, the one that we're familiar with, the fine, smaller grind. So it was super easy. That part went really, really fast. And so I was able to get all of it done in just maybe like an hour and a half or so. Just got all of it done. And then I went ahead and got it cooled down. So since I ran it through twice, I didn't want it to stay at that room temperature. So I got it cooled down, went and did some outside stuff, came back, was changed and ready for it. So this time I pulled it back out of the fridge. I had all the little individual 1 pound, enough to fit 1 pound in. And then I took each of the bags and weighed them out so that they were a little over 1 pound. I think there's a little more shrinking with turkey when you cook it. That's why when you buy it at the store, it's like 1 1/3 pounds per bag or whatever. So I went a little more than 1 pound in each one of the bags, got it labeled, and then we were able to end up with 32 of these bags that had, 1 pound plus in them. So we ended up with just probably under 38 pounds of maybe 36 pounds of ground turkey. But by the time I individually wrapped it up, it was 32 of those bags. Once I had those all flattened out and ready for the freezer, I went ahead and brought back out the ham, sliced up some cheese, opened up the croissants, and went ahead and did my assembly line style of the breakfast sandwiches, got them all put together, got them all individually wrapped and put into the freezer bags. I don't just eat breakfast sandwiches for breakfast because most of the time, honestly, I'm not a big breakfast person. I'll usually do bone broth and coffee or iced coffee, maybe snack on a little something. But most of the time I eat a really late breakfast, early lunch, I guess we'd call it, more like a brunch. And so I usually end up having this be for a meal, or if we're running around doing errands, it's a really good way for me to do dinner on the go for myself if I'm running around trying to get Olivia to her activities or whatever. So anyway, we got all the sandwiches ready to go. And as another bonus, I was able to get 7 bags of the baked ham vacuum packed and ready to go in like dinner size portions. So on another night, we can have and enjoy ham, and I don't have to roast off a whole baked ham. So I got the ham individually packaged, got the breakfast sandwiches ready to go. And then the very last thing that I needed to process from our meat processing day was the chicken broth that had been simmering for a couple of days. Now, the laying hens, since they are not like Cornish cross and they were older, they had quite a bit more fat on them than if you were doing just regular meat birds. And so I did run the bone broth through a colander to collect out all the bones and stuff. And then I actually let it sit overnight in the fridge that the fat could harden up. And I scooped off all of the excess fat. And then I ran it through a nut bag, which is a little bit more of a finer, it catches more particles than just like a fine mesh strainer, just to get out any like little pepper or seasoning or whatever. And so we got all that strained, and then I got it put into jars, and I got it canned up, pressure canned up all the broth. And we were able to get 24 jars of delicious chicken broth from chickens that were raised in our backyard, and I feel really good about that. And yeah, you can see that it turned out really well. I've got some of the pint-sized ones and the half-pint ones, and really happy with this project. So that's going to do it for me today, you guys. I want to thank you guys so much for all the likes and the comments and the shares. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. We have a whole lot more growing and food preserving and gardening and chickens and fun things ahead. I can't wait to see you guys next time. Bye, my friend.